This week on the Four Rivers Ag Report, the USDA released their numbers, but do they add up? And has crop insurance lost its grip? Also, we look back at the storm of storms, and I don't mean the one from last week. That and more next on the Four Rivers Ag Report. The Four Rivers Ag Report is underwritten in part by
the Department of Geology-Geography is a proud sponsor of the Four Rivers Ag Report and provides integrative learning opportunities for students and the community to explore the physical and cultural world, near and far.
Welcome to the Four Rivers Ag Report. I'm Fred Peralta. Well, the weather around here is just nuts. Last week, the polar vortex was sitting over us like a third grade bully during recess. This week, it's warm, it's cold, it's warm. But if the weather can't make up its mind, at least the days are getting just a little bit longer now. And while we're still a little bit away from spring, I bet there are a couple of you have started playing around in the machine shed, tweaking your planters. January won't last forever, thanks goodness, and the seed will soon be delivered and you'll be itching to go. And speaking of itching, there were a rash of reports out last week with some interesting findings. The big one, of course, was the USDA Crop Production Estimate that came out last Friday. Among other things, it says that Illinois won gold and silver, first place in soybean production and second place in corn. Illinois farmers harvested 460 million bushels of beans in 2013, a 20% increase over 2012. For corn, Illinois came in at 2.1 billion bushels, just short of Iowa's 2.16 billion. But there was other news in the report that caught some analysts by surprise. There may not be as much corn sitting around as everyone thought. First up, Todd Gleason had the opportunity to talk to ag economist Darrel about this and other findings hiding in the numbers.
Looking at corn first, I guess we'd start with the production number being slightly smaller than the November forecast. For some reason, the market had convinced itself that the number would be larger, so being slightly smaller, I think, turned out to be a bit friendly to the corn market. And then when we looked at the December 1 stocks number at 10.4 billion and change, that was smaller than one would have anticipated, even given the change in the production number, and would imply a very heavy rate of feed and residual use of corn during the first quarter of the marketing year. And that prompted the WSDA folks to raise their feed and residual forecast for the year by about 100 million bushels. And in net, we did see the projection of year-ending stocks drop by more than 150 million bushels.
In previous conversations, you told us that you thought WSDA faded that number as much as anything.
On the feed and residual, if you took the calculated disappearance during the first quarter and took it at face value and projected that for the remainder of the year, you would be projecting a much larger feed and residual use than USDA is including in their balance sheet. And so it says that they don't expect that rate to continue, and in fact, we might see some new information in subsequent stocks reports that would suggest that December 1 stocks were a bit underestimated.
And Dale, as we took a look at those numbers, one of the things that interested me was that the United States Department of Agriculture, in fact, did adjust both the acreage and the yield for corn. What was your assessment?
You know, it's interesting. USDA really did not change their price forecast based on these new numbers. They're still looking at a marketing year average of about 440. That would, I think, imply that we do need to rally a little bit from where we are now if we're going to reach that level. So I kind of agree with what Dale said, that kind of a short term, I think we can hold this rally that we got, that it looks like we've bottomed the corn market into the planting window, but a lot can change after we get into that window when we see what acreage is and what kind of weather is going to unfold for next year. So I don't, again, with the caveat that we've got to take the December stocks number with a grain of salt, and that the projection of year-ending stocks is just that, a projection. It's not a hard number. I don't think it's time to get wildly bullish, but I think we can say that we can hold this rally that we got today.
The USDA on its report changed the season's average cash price for the current marketing year, or the old crop corn, from $4.05 to $4.75 to $4.10 to $4.70, so they narrowed it by a nickel. And in the beans, they went from $11.50 to $13.50. Well, that was their previous range, and they narrowed that one up from to $11.75 to $13.25. So they changed it on both ends some too.
On both ends, but the median is still the same at $12.50 last month and again this month. So I think USDA really did not see this combination of reports as a game changer for prices for either corn or soybeans.
Darrel, when you looked at the 1099 number, I'm going to ask you about this. I would suspect that you thought that number, as we finished up today, was in line with your thinking as to what should happen with acreage in soybeans for new crop.
Yeah, I think the one thing we haven't talked about too much, and that's connected to that, Todd, is that we have eventually, I think, the real possibility of having too many acres of both corn and soybeans in 2014 if we factor in three things. One, 8.3 million acres prevented planted last year, 1.6 million acres coming out of the CRP, and a 1 million acre cut in winter wheat acres really opens the door for a lot of acreage of spring planted crops. I was not in the camp that thought we were going to make a huge shift away from corn to soybeans, although the market was beginning to encourage that. And I think what this 1099 number and perhaps moving lower is saying is soybeans probably got overpriced relative to corn for the 2014 crop, and we need to see some realignment there, either with lower beans or higher new crop corn prices.
With us now is Matt Bennett of TGM, and he is one of our crop guys, and he also keeps a close eye on the market. And Matt, what's your take on the USDA report?
Well, I think it was very surprising for a lot of people in that the production of the corn actually went down a little bit. The general consensus was that the production was going to raise some and usage would raise some, but we actually kind of got a double whammy in that production went down while usage went up. So we actually lowered our carryout significantly. Most people were expecting somewhere closer to a 2 billion bushel carryout, whereas we ended up, a 1.631. And so that's significantly lower than what the trade expected. Production actually, the yield went down, and it was 2.3 bushels less than the expectations at 158.8. And then you couple that with a few extra acres, about 500,000 more harvested acres, and that brings you to a crop size total that was less than what last month's was. I think the total number is 13.92, and so that's actually a fair amount lower than what the trade was expecting.
Now, do you think the corn has hit bottom, is about as low as it's going to go?
Well, I think that the recent lows going around $4, certainly could be a low. Looking at charts, I think that you could make a case that we could go on lower. And looking at it from the fundamental analysis, 1.6 is still a very big crop. I mean, it's a lot smaller than what we thought that it was as far as the carryout goes, the 1.6, but it's still a big carryout. And so a person has to realize that a lot of this is going to be heavily dependent upon the export market. It's going to be heavily dependent upon ethanol and then feed usage as well. All three of those are going fairly good so far this year. So if they continue good, I think that we're in a pretty good situation that we could, maybe have that floor in place at this point.
Now, what about beans? What's the report saying about bean usage?
Interestingly, on beans, it was just a little bit different take on the report. You saw the yield on beans actually stayed the same. Crop size on beans basically 3.289, and the expectations are 3.279. The carryout on beans was 150, which did not change from last month. The expectations were 149. There was a few people thinking they could cut that a little, but bottom line, everyone knows it's an extremely tight situation here in the U.S., and we're going to be heavily dependent upon South America because, a lot of people say, well, our exports maybe are just going to cease as soon as South America starts. But what we have to realize is our commitments have already exceeded 100% of what the USDA's forecast. So while they haven't all been shipped, a good deal of them have already been shipped, I think 65%. So most likely this bean market is going to stay very tight domestically, and it'll just depend upon how big the South American crop actually is.
Do you have any idea about area planting intentions? You know what the local guys are thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Originally, before this crop report, I would have said there was a very good chance bean acres would grow more than what maybe we've seen in the last few years. But this crop report probably changed things just a little bit, in that we put a little bit of life back into the corn market, maybe a little hope. And so I think that your planting intentions, by most people's expectations, are that corn's going to be down some and beans are going to be up some. Now, whenever I try to put numbers on that, I'm gonna guess the planting acreage for corn is gonna be 92 or 93 million acres, and I think beans will exceed 80, which would be a big deal for beans. But there's been a lot of very good prices for beans here in the last several months, and many of our producers that are forward thinking have been smart enough to go ahead and lock some of those in for next fall, so they can push their bean acres a little bit.
So, well, a lot of stuff to digest, and the guys are probably getting antsy to get it back out there and put in a new crop soon. So, good information. Thank you, Matt, and we'll be talking to you again, and definitely when you start planting. So, talk to you soon.
Thank you.
We don't quite know what's going to be in the Farm Bill when it eventually comes out, but there's already some changes happening in the world of crop insurance. I had a chance to talk to Gary Schnitkey about what these changes might mean to you. Gary Schnitkey is here, and he recently wrote an article in Farm Doc about a new crop insurance plan that's farmers are going to have to choose over. Gary, what is area risk protection insurance?
The new product is called Area Risk Protection Insurance, ARPI, and basically it's a replacement for the old group policies. It takes GRP, GRIP, combines them two together, and gives us a combo product for the area plan. So if a farmer had been buying GRIP before, they'd be now buying the Area Risk Protection Insurance policy.
So what's the difference? Why not stick with the old policy?
RMA introduced this policy, and I think what they were trying to do is have the combo policy for area products like they have for the farm level products. A couple of years ago, they combined all of those into the combo product. They did the same thing now for the group products. So you have area risk protection insurance. There's actually three key differences between ARPI and the group products, and I'll just mention those in terms of GRIP HR. The payments, given that the farmer selects the same coverage level and a corresponding same protection factor, ARPI will give the same protection and payments as GRIP, except at very low yields and prices, and those yields and prices aren't likely to happen.
Okay.
The ARPI requires farmers to report production, so that's different from the previous one. So when farmers buy the ARPI, they're going to have to report their yields. And the third difference is that ARPI has a date by which the planting has to occur, and it's the late June for corn and middle of July for soybeans. So if planting doesn't happen by that date, there will be no coverage.
So if we had a wet spring again and you couldn't get in for corn after June, no coverage on that crop.
That's right. So there are final planting dates for these policies, and they're in late June for corn. So if corn did not get planted, and I believe it's June 28th, if corn did not get planted by June 28th, there would be no coverage.
So there's also an area county aspect to this, isn't there?
Yep, both of these. So the ARPI policy makes its payments based on what happens to either county yields or county revenue. So it's county yields that matter. And there won't be any payments until county yields are released, typically in February and March in the year following production. So we don't know 2013 payments yet for sure. But in the year following those payments and our plantings, and that's again based on county yields and county revenue.
So one more thing for farmers to think about and to consider. What's the best way to learn more about the ARIP?
We have a article on it. It happened to be on our Farm Doc Daily publication or website. It's called Area Risk Protection Insurance, and it describes the policy. And crop insurance agents will also know about the policy.
Well, Gary, once again, you're our go-to guy when money matters. So I really appreciate you taking the time out for us today.
Thanks for having me.
The Illinois Commerce Commission is going to be rehearing the routing of the Illinois River Transmission Project soon. The transmission line project was planned to go through Moultrie County, and then when the Moultrie County property owners objected and submitted their own route, the Commission chose a route that veered away from Moultrie County and went through Piatt and Douglas counties. The ICC is expected to have a hearing within the next couple of weeks, and both groups are making their case. The Piatt and Douglas County groups are arguing that the newer route is longer, more costly to both build and maintain, and would use 40% more farmland than the other route. For more information or to register your opinion on the project, go to the public comment site at the ICC. And in December, the FDA announced changes in the use of antibiotics in food animals in the hopes of lessening the possibility of antimicrobial resistance in human medicine. There appears to be some confusion as to the ruling and what it means to livestock producers and other industry professionals. So the Department of Animal Sciences at the University of Illinois will offer a webinar to address the new rules on Tuesday, January 28th from noon until 1 p.m. I talked to Jim Pettigrew earlier this week about the webinar and what producers can expect to find out. And with me now is Dr. James Pettigrew. He's a professor of animal science at the University of Illinois. And Dr. Pettigrew, can you explain to us what this FDA ruling means to livestock producers?
Well, it's an important ruling. And first, let me tell you what it does not mean. It does not mean the elimination of antibiotics from food animal production.
Okay.
It does mean that there will be more restrictions, and we won't be able to use them in all the ways that we have used them in the past.
What ways were that?
Well, the main thing that FDA has said recently is that we cannot use antibiotics for production purposes in food animals.
Okay.
That means to improve growth rate, feed efficiency, and other aspects of animal performance. The second important thing they've said is that all antibiotic use in food animals must be under the supervision of a veterinarian. And the third thing that they have said is that the use of antibiotics to prevent diseases in animals, in food animals, is an appropriate use. And that's what actually sets this rule apart from the systems that have been in place in Europe.
So a lot of new stuff. Is this a practice that has been in widespread use? Is this going to be a major change for livestock producers?
It will be a significant change. It will make management of food animals a bit more difficult. It will not be a disaster. It will not destroy the industry, but it will be a bit challenging in some ways.
Okay, so let's talk about the webinar. There's a lot of information to get out there to producers. What is your webinar going to cover, and how can people get involved?
Okay, we will cover primarily just a discussion of what the FDA ruling says and what it does not say, and we'll explore that a bit, and then we'll talk a bit about how we think livestock producers should react to this, and what are some of the things that they can do. We have a lot of very effective health technologies that we use in animal production. And we need to be sure that we're using those as effectively as we can. We have quite a number of things that we can put in the feeds now that influence the immune system, for instance, that can help keep animals healthy, and we need to use those as effectively as we can. So those are some of the things that we'll be talking about.
Dr. Pettigrew, who would get Who would value from participating in this webinar?
Well, Fred, I think livestock producers would be interested. I think large animal veterinarians would be interested, food animal veterinarians. And I think anyone else associated with the livestock industry, whether they be in feed companies and companies that supply animal health products or academics. So I think and regulators, I think, will be interested.
So there's a lot of heat and not much light. We're hoping to get a little more light on this, aren't we?
We're hoping to, yes.
Okay, well, the address for, to get more information is on the screen. Dr. Pettigrew, thank you so much for participating. We look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.
The foot of snow we had last week went away almost as quickly as it came, and if something wasn't soggy before the melting, it most certainly was afterwards. But as Cameron suggested last week, it really wasn't enough to recharge the water table. The drought monitor map is looking a bit better, but part of our area is still in moderate or severe drought. I don't think there was a moisture problem after the winter of 1831. In fact, it may have been the worst winter ever for the state of Illinois. We thought this might be a good time to go back in our archives and bring you the story of the winter of the deep snow, 1830 to 1831, in Under the Four River Skies.
It started on December 20th with a cold rain, and by Christmas Eve the sleet and snow had begun. Along with the piling snow, there were maddening winds that made it impossible for a man to walk against for any reasonable amount of time. An early settler by the name of Dr. Julian M. Sturtevant, who was in Jacksonville, Illinois to help start Illinois College, wrote one of the best testimonials to this incredible winter storm.
For weeks, certainly for not less than 2 weeks, the mercury in the thermometer tube was not, on any one morning, higher than 12 degrees below zero. The wind was a steady, fierce gale from the northwest, day and night. The air was filled with flying snow, which blinded the eyes and almost stopped the breath of anyone who attempted to face it.
Transportation was at a dead stop during this event. A man and his wife, along with their 6 children that attempted to make their way through the storm by wagon, were found dead, huddled together next to their wagon that was half covered in snow. And they weren't the only people to not make it. When a person did dare an attempt to venture out into the 6-foot snowdrifts and strong northwesterly winds, tracks made by a team and wagon would be covered up before they even turned around to return. But it was absolutely necessary to leave the home in order to get food or fuel. Cutting down trees to burn for heat was almost impossible because of the wind and snow, but was made even more difficult because of the frozen moisture in all of the trees. But it had to be done in order to survive. Many people who were just moving into the area from the south had not yet finished building their homes before the winter hit. The cold, snow, and wind caught them by surprise. From one testimony, there were entire villages of 50 living in just 2 houses that had chimneys and 4 walls in the entire community. Sometimes a tiny fire was just not enough to keep the citizens of Illinois warm during this event. Clothes had to be piled on along with blankets and as many other layers as possible to survive. Wild animals such as deer, bison, and birds died off in the hundreds due to starvation or being trapped in the cold and killed by other starving predators. John Buckles, who was a resident of central Illinois at the time, said the wild deer became tame with hunger and would even walk up to the door of his cabin to be fed. Hogs, poultry, and other stock also died off in great numbers from the cold and hunger because corn could not be gathered from beneath the piles of snow to feed them.
Hi, I'm Jessica Killow with your Insight Extension. Farming 2014 Managing Risk, Markets, and Operations Conference has been set for February 4th, 2014. The conference will take place from 8 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. at the Decatur Conference Center and Hotel. Presentations will include crop insurance for 2014, corn and soybean outlook, stored grain issues, and many more. For more information and for the full list of speakers and presentations, visit our website. As heifer retention begins, making good decisions on genetics will pay dividends. Producers can learn more at the annual Beef Sire Selection and Management Seminar on Wednesday, January 29th from 4:45 until 8 o'clock p.m. at Pitstick Pavilion near Ottawa, Illinois. For more information on this event, please visit our website. Every good resolution needs a game plan. Improving health likely involves adding more physical activity and eating healthier, but it doesn't have to be about deprivation. Check out our website for a fun list of ways to live healthier and happier in 2014. As always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and visit our website to stay up to date on our programming. From U of I Extension serving Coles, Cumberland, Moultrie, Douglas, and Shelby counties, this has been Jessica Killow with your Inside Extension.
And finally, research has shown what most farmers knew a long time ago. Working on your feet is healthy for you. 2 Kansas researchers have found that people who sit for fewer hours and are more active will reduce their risk of chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, heart disease, even some types of cancer. Researchers showed that something as simple as standing at work every few hours makes a difference. Why is that? They think that excessive sitting turns off important molecules needed for energy. But if I'm standing up, I'm going to be much further away from the nachos. Well, that's it for this week. Work hard, be safe, and enjoy the beautiful sunsets. I'm Fred Peralta, and thanks for watching the Four Rivers Ag Report. The Four Rivers Ag Report is underwritten in part by
The Department of Geology-Geography is a proud sponsor of the Four Rivers Ag Report and provides integrative learning opportunities for students and the community to explore the physical and cultural world near and far.